One city man sees movie, comes out west, tells no one where he is nor what he is doing, forgets that he's 64 years old, and charges off into wilderness without a solid idea of what he is getting into. I guess he learned nothing from the movie 127 Hours that inspired his trip to Utah. Despite the fact that he repeated every tourist mistakes could make, he miraculously survived. Here's his survival story. Colorado Plateau. Bluejohn Canyon is located in Utah, adjacent to Canyonlands National Park. Bluejohn Canyon is named after a 19th century outlaw named John Griffith, who reportedly kept stolen horses in the area. He had one blue eye and one brown eye, and he was also known by the nickname Blue John. Traversing the full length of Bluejohn Canyon requires technical skills and canyoning equipment. However, the fact the Colorado Plateau is one of the driest places in the United States does not prevent this place from being one of the most popular vacation spots. Described by author Edward Abbey, a frequent visitor, as the strangest, most wonderful, magical place on earth, there is nothing like it anywhere else. The wilderness nature of America's Wild West annually attracts million tourists from around the world who get to experience the incredible canyon in real life. Interesting geology, resulting from the influence of water denudation of easily soluble rocks. One of these person was our hero, a 64 years old man, Amos Wayne Richards. On September 8, 2011, he went on a solo hike through Bluejohn Canyon. Everybody remembers Aaron Ralston, a climber who in real life became stuck in that very canyon. Ralston had gone climbing without telling anyone his plans, and after he became trapped under a boulder, he had to cut off his own arm in order to free himself. It is not clear why Richards thought it would be a good idea to follow suit.
Just really commendable what the guy went through. When, desperate times, as in desperate days, what are you going to do? What would you do to keep yourself alive? Because I guess, if you think about it at the time, it's like, well, I don't want to die either way, so I better die trying to get free instead of just sitting here. But just the luck as well. Because think about you, how much luck was involved with this was crazy. What I mean by that is, to get your arm out, to not bleed to death, to be able, with only 2 burritos and a few bits of water in your belly, to be able to walk all this point through the canyon. Thankfully, there were a guy and his 2 kids, which I don't know, this little nugget of information was stuck in my head that they did what they had, water and 2 Oreos. Then, the luck of not bleeding to death, to getting out of that canyon, the luck of finding these 2 and these 3 individuals, a guy and his 2 kids, and then a chopper happens to be around that area, because that by that point the boss knew that the guy had not come in. The mom was contacted, and she tried to contact people. She got into the guy Aaron Ralston's computer, search and rescue, which they even said they assumed they would find a body, and that apparently they were ready to call it off or go back for gasoline or something, and lo and behold, boom, there he goes, got him on. And about how the guy, even though he went through all this, he still goes climbing mountains, which in a way almost infuriated the fuck out of me. Like, come on, dude, like. But I get it. He's not going to let this stop his life. He's just going to be much more cautious and tell people where he's at and stuff. But, this is his dream. I'd be like, you know what? Let me work at, I don't know, what kind of retail do you have? Let me just work a much more safer, calmer environment.
Amos Wayne Richards, 64 years old, had been hiking for a few days in Canyonlands National Park when he decided to drive 100 miles to hike the Little Bluejohn Canyon on September 8. Richards' hike started out as an easy adventure for the outdoorsman. The hike seemed fairly easy until he started down a 70-foot deep ravine and got within 10 feet of the bottom when he slipped and fell.
I dislocated my shoulder and bumped my head on the rock. It took me about 3 or 4 minutes to work my shoulder and get it back in place, and once I got it back in place, I stood up and realized my ankle hurt a little bit.
He was able to pop his shoulder back in place. Thinking he'd escaped the worst of his injuries, he took pictures of the canyon and then began to climb out the same way he had climbed into the canyon. He noticed his ankle was hurting, but it wasn't severe at first. Holding his right foot in place to ease the pain, it took him 30 minutes to get out of the canyon.
I went to take a step and realized that I couldn't put an ounce of weight on my foot, so I sat there for about 30 minutes, thinking maybe I wasn't going to be found. But then I went ahead and cut up camera bag and a water bag, and strapped them around my knees for pads and started crawling.
He crawled for 4 days with just 2 protein bars, 2 bottles of water, and 2 bottles of isotonic. He tried and failed to make a splint for his broken leg.
I snacked on the bars and drank the water. By the end of the second day, I'd finished the water up, but that night thunderstorms came up and it rained real hard, and I could hear water rushing in the ditch nearby. So the next morning, I went in the ditch and found a puddle of water and filled my bottles back up, and I had to strain them through my shirt to get all the trash out of them, bugs and sticks.
Within hours, a helicopter spotted Richards, who used the flash on his camera to catch the pilot's attention only a couple of miles from his car. When he was rescued by park rangers from Canyonlands National Park, that was the most wonderful thing he'd ever seen in his life. Paul Henderson, a spokesman for Canyonlands National Park, said that rangers had been looking for Richards since they found his campsite unattended. He said once they figured out where they thought he was and got a helicopter up in the air, it was a relatively quick process to spot him and to pick him up and transport him to the hospital. Richards was treated for the shattered leg and dehydration at a hospital in Moab, Utah, before returning to North Carolina to recover. Very often people want to test up themselves or to try out their luck by making an attempt to repeat something. However, very often is associated with a risk to life, and in this case the expression, learning from other people's mistakes, definitely does not work for them. Let's take an example of a well-known place in Alaska, where the bus on which the infamous Alexander Supertramp lived and died was previously located. Enough people have died on the way to this iconic site before the bus was eventually put away in a museum. However, they say that people still continue to come there. Unfortunately, we have always been faced to this, and apparently we will continue to face it for a long time. What a bad example is also an example. Or the story of Everest. The killer mountain has left many's, and continues to leave numerous climbers on its slopes, who want to try luck on their own skin. In fact, is inexplicable, but true. People will always do it again. Just be as careful as possible in the future by watching this video.